The only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking, don't settle. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. And if you haven't found it yet, keep looking, don't settle. Love what you do. Steve Jobs, an amazing individual, one that was persistent in everything he did, persistent in being able to move forward, to identify what he could do to help those the best he could and be creative when something happened. See, we have to remember life is made for us, not to us. And that's kind of the crux to our message today. How often do we get stuck? Do we get stuck and we're unsure where to go next? Unsure, okay, whether we're talking about stakeholders, someone on the home front, whatever it may be, we get stuck. Trust me, it happens to me too. All sorts of different conditions. We understand sometimes we don't know why it happens, but it happens. When we think about when we're doing great work, I just finished up a practitioner discussion just a few minutes ago, and she's phenomenal at what she does. But it was about the focus where she loves to be, being able to further portray and say, okay, how do I work with that specialty? How can you take those traits? And that was my question. How do you take the traits that you really enjoy and further expand upon that versus just being a consultant? For example, for her, she loves building teams, managing people, managing teams to be successful. She rolls up her sleeves as well. But the day-to-day grind inside a consulting organization, it's a little painful. I think it happens to all of us. We all get there. Seen that too. You're just a number. And just realize when you step into that role that you are just a number, because that's what you're supposed to be. But that's what you're supposed to be in that role. That's not what you really are. We talk about alignment. How are we aligned with ourselves? How are we aligned with what we really enjoy to do? How are we portraying that, having others help us be more and accentuate what we really enjoy, what brings us to where we are? See, I was talking to a practitioner even last week, and similar type of scenario, he loved building teams. I'm talking about not just, 5 or 6 people in teams. I'm talking like 80 people in a team. Phenomenal. And everyone loved it. And we actually had a similar background from the background we had. And he said, Bill, for years, I loved working 18-hour days. I mean, it got a little grueling after a while. So I managed it, but we didn't have to work every weekend. But I really enjoyed the job because the next day I enjoyed it. And he goes, also, I left it because I did all I could do. So I knew my constraints. So I have this new job, similar type role, but I don't enjoy it. It's not meant for people. I'm unable to connect with the team because the culture is different. I won't go any further in that conversation. I'll let you figure out the result on your own. But the reality is, are you a right fit where you are? I'm not saying to quit your job, just quit. Some people do. But how do you work through what you have? How do you work through those constraints to be more successful? See, we get so frustrated. And keep in mind, when frustration happens, that means there's a misalignment between what we expect to happen and what really does. There's an expectation disconnect. That's what frustration really means. Which also means that our expectations were misaligned. Whether it wasn't communicated, we all make assumptions, right? Too many assumptions, not validated. Is that happening to you? I know it's happened to me. I get reminded, even by my loved ones. Sometimes it happens. And yes, those conversations get rather interesting, but I work through it. I work through it on both sides because I realize how can we, and I ask the question, how can we be more beneficial with this discussion? Sure, we vent, we get frustrated, but at the end of the day, we still have to respect each other. And sometimes that doesn't happen. We get, okay, we get in, put against the wall, and where do we take us? And I just used to be just as guilty. Oh my gosh, just as guilty. But how do we work through that? How do we determine if we don't like what we're doing, what's next for us? What's that utopian environment? What can we do differently? Even if we have to stay where we are right at the moment, what else can we do to help make tomorrow a better day? Make the next 5 minutes a better time. Make our ability to better communicate. We can work on that one step at a time. You know, I was talking to a person in Boy Scouts yesterday. And we were talking about just some of the challenges. He actually just recently took over a role as a ranger in a Boy Scout camp. Rather challenging on several fronts, but because of the previous ranger, we loved him to death. He was great, but some things got overgrown, which happens. A lot of trees, wildlife, it happens, right? And he talked about how he literally took 15 minutes every day to trim some hedges, to trim back some shrubbery, to trim back some trees, 15 minutes every day. And the response, he said, Bill, I was amazed. Within 6 months, I had folks talking to me and calling me. He's like, what have you done to the place? It looks great. 15 minutes a day. Think about that. 15 minutes a day and the landscape looks totally different. So I'm going to portray that back to you. What can you do for 15 minutes a day to help you do what you need to? I'll give you an example of something I do. Presentation skills. Stuff like this. I go on video almost every day now. Practice, practice, practice. That's the only way to Carnegie Hall. I'm not trying to get to Carnegie Hall, but you get my point. And Carnegie Hall, for those who don't know it, then you're outside the US, it's actually a very exclusive hall we have in the northeastern US. That's for orchestras, events, things like that. It's a very nice place. The whole idea is if you play an orchestra, you want to be part of Carnegie Hall. That's one of the more elite type of groups you want to be part of. It's something you achieve towards, which is great. I'm not a musician like that. Trust me, I used to beat drums when I was in high school, or actually junior high, in the middle school. But yeah, that's just not me. But I love listen to music, classical, rock and roll. Trust me, I'm an 80s guy. I love it. Enough that my kids love it. And my point back to you, our point here. What can you do for 15 minutes a day? Or maybe you need to be an hour a week to help you better achieve a skill that you need to improve on, that you need to thrive with. For example, one of the things I do, back to me, is I go to Toastmasters. Learn how to better speak, how to better present, how to get feedback from others. I really enjoy it. And I do it virtually as well as in person. Totally different experiences both times. And I have a Toastmasters group that does both. Phenomenal experience. Do I get it perfect? Oh, heck no. But that's not, as you can tell from my enthusiasm, that's what it's all about. You can't grow unless you fail. Feedback is not about failing. It's about learning how to do it better. We all make mistakes. It's human. Step up for it. It's okay. The reality is, how can you further improve what you're doing? For example, going back to my conversation I just wrapped up with a practitioner a few minutes ago. She talked about, okay, how she doesn't want to be in the technology grind, doesn't want to learn the different skills and different technology because it's not worth her time. And I have to say, I totally agree. Learning a specific technology just to embrace it, you learn some additional skills, but The reality is, if you're managing people, you need to understand the basics. You don't need to know how to script. You don't. And today's technologies, they think about that too much. I'm not saying you should not understand how to script. That's totally different. But doing it day in, day out, you will burn out 1,000%. Now, if you love to code, you're going to enjoy it 1,000%. And yes, I'm one of those guys. I love to code at times. I love to look at process. I love to talk to people. I love to look at the governance behind it. I'm one of those guys that like the bigger picture, but I have no problem rolling up my sleeves. But not everyone's like that. I don't want everyone like me. I'm not saying you don't want some of the skills that I have, that how I portray it. I want you to better understand what you love to do. See, we have this thing, and it's become a cultural problem when it comes to asset management, software asset management, configuration management. We get the stigma that here's a box, and people love to put other people in boxes. But the reality is, how are you able to move forward with looking at that box? But is that box for you is the question. It may not be. That's okay. You may not like to present. That's okay. But you love to data mine. That's okay. I'll take the data mining any day of the week. I was talking to another practitioner last week, and she's 4 weeks into software asset management, or 4 weeks. No, 4 months. 4 months. I get the time right. 4 months. I says, Bill, I don't understand software asset management. What is it? I asked her what her skills were, and she just literally 4 months out of university. Out of the university, she just took this first job where she goes, and she just did not understand how software asset management aligns with her skills. And she had digital commerce. She talked about how she looked at the contracts, how she could audit, how she understood how to work with vendors. And she says, well, how does that relate to software asset management? And I go, you're kidding, right? So you just no. I said, okay. First of all, I will tell you this straight out. I will take you over a lot of people they say have the certifications of software asset management any day of the week compared to the skills they have, because they don't have those skills that you already have and you've learned from school. You by yourself understand how to talk to other vendors, when to do it, how to do it, how to look at the contracts. You also know how to audit the data that comes to you. Things you don't teach, things they don't teach any of these certifications. Hopefully from this video, that changed your approach, which is the whole purpose why I do what I do. But those skills that you have inherently that you say you don't know how to do it, you already understand. I'll also say something about this individual. And keep in mind, she's only 4 months into it. Everything she talked about, her skill set, et cetera, she could articulate extremely well. I know folks have been doing it for years that couldn't do it as well as she did. Yes, she was that good and just learning. See, sometimes we can learn from the youth, and I'll consider youth compared to me. Sometimes understanding that will help us go that next step. So if there's something we can do within the co-op, please reach out, go that next step. And I want you to really realize one thing is when you apply some of these suggestions, I'm going to give you a warning. They may actually work. You have to apply them. Listening is one thing, but the application. Because when you look at the lesson, listening is just merely knowing. Instead, put the knowledge to use. Identify how you could do it. Put it into your habits, what you do day in, day out. That's the purpose here. Think about how you, again, applying the habits and some of the suggestions you heard from this Motivation Monday to help you further thrive within your day, to help you not just thrive within your day, but how you present yourself to others, how you're able to help their own energy level and everyone else around you exceed expectations. not just exceed expectations, but you create your own movement within the group you have. You start having a lot more fun. So think about that. Be safe. Don't think anything too crazy. If there's something I can help, please reach out. Absolutely. And lastly, I'm going to put a little schedule out here. If you want to schedule your one-on-one with me, hey, I'm going to put my schedule totally exposed to you, available to you when I say exposed, totally available to you. And if there's something I can do, please, please, please reach out and I will talk to you soon. Outside that, have a great week. Look forward to talking to you next week.